People don't break you by standing in your way. They break you much earlier, by making you doubt yourself before you even move. And once doubt enters, you don't need an enemy anymore. You begin delaying your own decisions, shrinking your own voice, explaining yourself to people who were never listening, and waiting for permission from those who were never meant to lead your life. This is not about becoming cold. It is not about revenge, arrogance, or pretending that criticism does not hurt. It is about seeing the exact place where the outside world gains access to your inner weakness. A comment only breaks you when it finds an agreement inside you. A rejection only becomes identity when doubt turns it into proof. A silence only controls you when you use it to question your worth. And once you understand how doubt opens that door, you can begin to close it. Not loudly, not bitterly, but with the quiet strength of someone who has stopped betraying themselves from within. People don't break you. Your doubt opens the door. People can hurt you, but they do not always have the power to define you. That power usually appears later, in the meaning your mind gives to what happened. A comment becomes dangerous when it touches a doubt you already carry. A rejection becomes heavier when some part of you was already afraid you were not worth choosing. A criticism becomes louder when it confirms something you secretly feared about yourself. This is why two people can hear the same harsh sentence and respond completely differently. One feels the sting, takes what is useful, and moves on. The other carries it for months, because the sentence found an open wound. Doubt turns ordinary events into personal verdicts. A delayed reply becomes, "They do not care about me." A failed attempt becomes, "I am not capable." A cold reaction becomes, "I should not have spoken." A moment of silence becomes, "I am being rejected." The outside event may be small, but doubt expands it until it feels like evidence against your whole identity. This is where the real break begins, not when someone criticizes you, but when you start helping the criticism finish its work. You replay it, you add to it, you imagine what they meant, you build a case against yourself, and soon the other person is no longer even needed. Their sentence becomes your inner voice. Something happens, then the mind explains it. The event is one thing, the explanation is another. Someone does not support you. That is painful, but when the mind says, "This means I should stop," that is an interpretation. Someone doubts your ability. That may sting, but when the mind says, "They must be right," that is the door opening. The practical move is simple, but not always easy. Separate the event from the verdict. Ask yourself, what actually happened? Then ask, what am I making this mean about me? Maybe they criticized one action, not your entire worth. Maybe one attempt failed, not your future. Maybe someone's silence reflects their limits, not your value. This does not mean pretending nothing hurts. Strength is not numbness. It means pain does not automatically get promoted into identity. You can feel disappointed without becoming small. You can be misunderstood without begging to be seen. You can be criticized without giving a stranger, a friend, or even someone you love, the authority to decide who you are. Nobody can fully break you without your doubt helping them from the inside. That is not blame. It is power returned to the right place. Because once you notice the door, you can stop leaving it open for every passing opinion. Stop believing every fear that sounds like wisdom. Not every voice that tells you to wait is protecting you. Sometimes fear sounds calm, mature, and reasonable because it knows you would reject it if it sounded weak. It says, "Be realistic." It says, Think about it longer. It says, "You are not ready yet." It says, "Do not risk looking foolish." And sometimes caution is necessary. There are moments when patience is wisdom, when preparation matters, when rushing would only create damage. But there is a difference between wisdom that sharpens your next step and fear that keeps moving the step farther away. Wisdom prepares you to act. Fear prepares you to avoid. Wisdom asks for clarity. Fear asks for perfect certainty. Wisdom says, "Learn what you need, then move." Fear says, "Do not move until no one can judge you. Nothing can go wrong, and failure is impossible." That sounds safe, but it is not safety. It is paralysis with better language. This is how self-doubt hides inside intelligence. You begin to build arguments against your own movement. You tell yourself you are being strategic, but every strategy ends in delay. You tell yourself you are waiting for the right time, but the right time keeps changing its face. You tell yourself you're protecting your future, but what you're really protecting is the comfort of not being tested. A useful test is this. After listening to that inner voice, do you become clearer or smaller? If the thought helps you prepare, improve, or choose more wisely, it may be caution. If it only makes you hide, postpone, overthink, or ask for more reassurance, it is probably fear pretending to be wisdom. The Stoics spoke about examining impressions before obeying them. In ordinary language, this means not believing the first story your mind gives you. The thought arrives, "If I start, people will laugh." You do not have to fight it, but you also do not have to kneel before it. You can ask, "Is this a fact, or is this fear predicting pain?" You can ask, "What would I do if embarrassment was uncomfortable, but not fatal?" Fear often exaggerates the cost of action and hides the cost of avoidance. It shows you the pain of failing, but not the pain of staying the same. It shows you the discomfort of being seen, but not the slow damage of hiding your life from the world. You do not need to feel fearless to move. You only need to stop confusing fear with final truth. Sometimes the most honest sentence you can tell yourself is, "This may be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not a command." And once you learn to separate true wisdom from disguised fear, self-doubt loses one of its favorite masks. Your need for approval is where they control you. If you need people to approve of you before you move, your life is not fully yours yet. That may sound harsh, but it is not meant to shame you. The need for approval is human. Every person wants to be seen, understood, and encouraged. There is nothing weak about wanting support. The problem begins when support becomes permission, when you cannot act until someone agrees, when you cannot speak until someone validates your words, when you cannot choose your own direction until the people around you make it feel safe. That is where approval becomes a leash. You delay because someone might judge. You soften your truth because someone might dislike it. You hide your ambition because someone may call it unrealistic. You explain your choices before anyone even asks, because some part of you is still trying to prove that you are allowed to live differently. And the more you do this, the more your inner authority moves outside of you. This is how people control you without needing to control you directly. They only have to withhold approval. A cold look becomes enough. A sarcastic comment becomes enough. A lack of encouragement becomes enough. Suddenly, you are not asking, "Is this right for me?" You are asking, "Will they understand?" And those are very different questions. A person who cannot act without applause is still being governed by the crowd, not always by a large crowd. Sometimes the crowd is one parent, one partner, one friend, one group, one memory of being laughed at, one voice from the past that still lives in the mind. Approval-seeking does not always look like insecurity. Sometimes it looks like being polite, flexible, reasonable, or easy to be around. But underneath, the self is waiting to be allowed. Your character belongs to you, but other people's opinions do not. Their approval may feel good, but it cannot be the foundation. If your peace depends on their agreement, then your peace will rise and fall with moods you cannot control. If your courage depends on their encouragement, then your courage will disappear the moment they become silent. The practical shift is to ask a better question before you act. Not, will everyone approve of this? But, can I respect myself if I keep ignoring what I know? That question brings authority back inside. You can love people without making them your judges. You can listen without surrendering. You can respect someone's view without handing them the steering wheel of your life. Approval feels warm, but self-respect is steadier. And once you stop needing permission to take the next honest step, people lose one of the easiest ways to keep you small. Criticism only breaks the part of you that still agrees with it. Criticism hurts most when it sounds like something you already feared was true. If you secretly doubt your intelligence, one careless comment can feel like a final judgment. If you secretly doubt your worth, rejection can feel like a sentence. If you secretly believe you are behind in life, someone else's success can feel like evidence against you. The pain is not only in what they said, it is in the agreement that wakes up inside you when they say it. That is why some criticism passes through you, while other criticism stays. One person can insult something you do not doubt, and it may annoy you, but it does not enter deeply. Another person touches the exact insecurity you have been hiding from, and suddenly the whole nervous system reacts. The mind says, they see it too, and in that moment, criticism becomes more than feedback. It becomes confirmation, but not all criticism deserves the same place in your mind. Some criticism is useful correction. It shows you where your work can improve, where your behavior caused harm, where your thinking became careless, where your ego resisted truth. That kind of criticism may be uncomfortable, but it can make you stronger if you receive it without collapsing. The problem is not feedback. The problem is turning every opinion into identity. There is a difference between listening and surrendering. Listening means you are willing to examine what was said. Surrendering means you let someone else decide what it means about who you are. A mature person can hear criticism and ask, is there truth here? But they do not have to ask, does this define me? Those are not the same question. This is where self-doubt makes criticism dangerous. It does not just hear the words, it finishes them. Someone says, this needs work, and doubt adds, you are not good enough. Someone says, I disagree, and doubt adds, you should have stayed silent. Someone says nothing at all, and doubt adds, you failed. The wound grows because the mind collaborates with the attack. A useful practice is to separate correction from condemnation. Correction is specific. Condemnation is total. Correction says, this action could be better. Condemnation says, you are not enough. Correction gives you something to work with. Condemnation tries to turn you into the mistake. When criticism comes, ask, is this pointing to something I can improve, or is it asking me to abandon myself? Take the truth without taking the poison. Let useful feedback sharpen you, but do not let cruel or careless words become the language you use against yourself. Criticism becomes less dangerous when your inner agreement changes. If you know you are still learning, being corrected does not destroy you. If you know your worth is not on trial, rejection does not become identity. If you know one mistake is not the whole story, failure becomes information instead of a verdict. And when that happens, criticism may still sting, but it no longer owns the deepest part of you. Build evidence until doubt has nothing to feed on. Self-doubt does not disappear because you insult it, or argue with it, or repeat beautiful sentences over a weak foundation. Doubt becomes weaker when the mind can no longer deny the evidence. This is where many people make the mistake of trying to feel confident before they act. They wait for a mood. They wait for certainty. They wait for the day their inner voice finally says, "Now you are ready." But self-trust rarely arrives before action. More often, it is built after action, through the quiet record of promises kept when no one was watching. Confidence is not just a feeling. It is a record. Every time you do what you said you would do, you give your mind evidence. Every time you finish the task you wanted to avoid, you give your mind evidence. Every time you tell the truth, set the boundary, return after failing, or take one step while fear is still speaking, you create proof that you are not as helpless as doubt says you are. This kind of evidence does not have to be dramatic. In fact, the smaller evidence is often more powerful, because it is repeatable. Waking up when you said you would, keeping one promise to yourself, practicing for 20 minutes, sending the message you avoided, cleaning the space you kept postponing, doing the uncomfortable thing without making a performance out of it. These actions may look ordinary, but they train the mind to believe you again. Doubt feeds on broken promises. It remembers the times you said you would start and did not. It remembers the decisions you abandoned because someone questioned you. It remembers the moments when fear spoke and you obeyed. This is not meant to make you feel guilty. It is meant to show why self-trust feels weak. The mind is not always being cruel. Sometimes it is simply reading your history. So the work is to build a new history. Do not begin with a grand declaration. Begin with something small enough to keep. Doubt loves huge promises, because huge promises are easy to break. A strong life is often rebuilt through small, boring, completed actions. One promise kept today becomes one piece of evidence. Then another, then another. Eventually the mind has less material to use against you. This is more useful than empty affirmation. Saying, "I believe in myself," can help if it is connected to action. But if the sentence has no evidence behind it, part of the mind rejects it. A better approach is to create the proof first. Let your behavior become the argument. Let discipline speak to doubt. In a language doubt understands. Character is not formed by imagining strength, but by practicing it in ordinary conditions. And one day, doubt still speaks, but it no longer sounds like authority. It sounds like an old voice, trying to argue against a record that has become too strong to ignore. Stop explaining your growth to people who need you small. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to the person you are becoming. That sentence can sound harsh at first, but it is not about suspicion. It is not about believing everyone is against you. Most people are not evil. Many are simply attached to the version of you they understand. The version that apologized too quickly, the version that needed approval before moving, the version that explained every decision until no one felt uncomfortable, the version that stayed available, agreeable, and easy to predict. When you begin to change, that old arrangement gets disturbed. You may become more disciplined, and someone calls you intense, you may become quieter, and someone calls you distant. You may set boundaries, and someone says you have changed. You may stop explaining yourself, and someone interprets your peace as arrogance. Sometimes they are not reacting to your growth itself. They are reacting to the loss of access they once had, to your doubt. This is where many people make a painful mistake. They start defending their growth to people who were more comfortable with their weakness. They write long messages. They explain their healing. They justify their discipline. They try to prove that their boundaries are not cruel. Their silence is not punishment. Their standards are not pride. But growth that constantly has to defend itself becomes exhausted. It starts looking backward for permission, instead of moving forward with clarity. There is a difference between being open to honest conversation and submitting your becoming to public approval. If someone genuinely wants to understand you, clarity may be useful. But if someone only wants to pull you back into the old role, no explanation will be enough. They are not asking for understanding. They are asking for the old access. The practical lesson is simple. Explain less to people who benefit from your confusion. Let your life become the explanation. Let consistency speak. Let your new choices repeat long enough that they no longer need an announcement. You do not have to convince everyone that your growth is valid before you are allowed to continue growing. This is not coldness. It is protection. A seed does not explain itself to every passerby before becoming a tree. It simply stays rooted long enough for the shape to become undeniable. In the same way, your growth needs privacy, patience, and a certain refusal to be dragged into every debate about who you used to be. Some people will meet the new version of you with respect. Others will test whether the old version is still available. They may use guilt, sarcasm, silence, or confusion. But if your direction is honest, you do not need to shrink just because someone else is adjusting slowly. You are allowed to grow without making everyone comfortable first. You are allowed to become more disciplined without defending your seriousness. You are allowed to protect your peace without writing an essay about why. And the less you explain your becoming to people who need you small, the more energy you have to actually become. Pressure reveals whether you trust yourself or still need permission. Self-trust is easy to imagine when nothing is testing it. It is easy to feel strong when no one is criticizing you, easy to feel clear when no one is disappointed, easy to feel independent when approval is already present. But pressure has a way of removing the decoration. It shows whether your confidence is rooted inside you or still waiting for the world to confirm it. You see this in small moments. Someone questions your decision, and suddenly the decision you felt peaceful about begins to look uncertain. Someone does not support your plan, and suddenly the plan feels less real. Someone misunderstands your silence, and you feel the old urge to over-explain. One failure happens, and the mind whispers, "Maybe they were right about you." This is where self-doubt tries to return through the back door, not as a new truth, but as an old habit, looking for familiar evidence. Pressure does not create your foundation, it reveals it. This is not meant to sound cruel, it is actually useful, because every moment of pressure shows you where your self-trust is still dependent on permission. If rejection makes you abandon your direction immediately, then some part of you still needed acceptance to keep going. If criticism makes you collapse instead of examine, then some part of you still believed your worth was on trial. If silence from others makes you stop moving, then some part of you still treated their attention as fuel. The work is not to become immune to pressure. That would be unrealistic. Pressure will affect you. Criticism may sting. Rejection may hurt. Being misunderstood may feel lonely. The stronger person is not the one who feels nothing. The stronger person is the one who can feel the pressure without instantly betraying their own judgment. A practical question helps here. If no one reassured me right now, what would I still know to be true? This question brings you back to the part of you that is not waiting for applause. Maybe you still know the work matters. Maybe you still know the boundary was necessary. Maybe you still know the mistake can be corrected. Maybe you still know that one person's reaction is not enough evidence to abandon your direction. Character is not a mood. It is not the confidence you feel when life is easy. It is the shape you return to. When the world becomes cold, when praise disappears, when comfort is gone. When people misunderstand you, what remains? That remainder tells the truth. And if what remains is still shaky, that is not failure. It is information. It shows where more evidence needs to be built, where more promises need to be kept, where more emotional independence needs to be practiced. Pressure is not only a threat, it is a test that reveals what still needs training. Once you stop seeing pressure as proof that you are weak, you can start using it as a mirror, and each time you remain loyal to your judgment under pressure, even in a small way, the weakest door begins to close. Once you stop doubting yourself, they lose access to your weakest door. People do not lose power over you because they become kinder. They lose power when their words can no longer enter through the part of you that secretly agrees with them. This is the final change. Not that criticism disappears, not that rejection stops hurting, not that people suddenly understand you, support you, or speak with perfect fairness. Life does not become that clean. Some people will still doubt you. Some will still misread your silence. Some will still question your direction. Some may even prefer the older version of you, the version that needed permission before acting. But once you stop doubting yourself in the same way, their access changes. Their silence no longer becomes evidence that you are unwanted. Their criticism no longer becomes proof that you are incapable. Their rejection no longer becomes a sentence on your worth. Their misunderstanding no longer forces you into an exhausting performance of explanation. You may still feel the sting, but the sting does not become your identity. It passes through a stronger mind. This is not arrogance. Arrogance refuses to listen because it is afraid of being wrong. Self-trust can listen without collapsing. It can hear feedback and take what is useful. It can admit mistakes without becoming the mistake. It can change direction without calling itself a failure. A person who trusts themselves does not need to pretend they are perfect. They simply no longer treat every imperfection as proof that they should stop. When self-doubt weakens, manipulation becomes harder. Guilt does not move you as quickly. Disapproval does not shrink you as easily. Silence does not make you chase as desperately. Criticism does not make you abandon your work in the first painful moment. This is what people feel when they say someone has become stronger. It is not that the person became emotionless. It is that their emotions no longer hand over the steering wheel. The practical truth is this: the world will always offer reasons to doubt yourself. If you are waiting for a life where nobody criticizes you, nobody misunderstands you, nobody questions you, and nobody leaves, you will keep postponing your own freedom. The point is not to remove every external threat. The point is to stop making your inner foundation available to every external movement. That foundation is built through judgment, action, and repetition. You question the verdict doubt creates. You separate fear from wisdom. You stop waiting for approval. You take feedback without turning it into identity. You build evidence through promises kept. You protect your growth from people who need you small. You stand under pressure long enough to see that you can remain with yourself. And then something changes. Not loudly, not like a dramatic victory, more like a door closing from the inside. The same words that once would have broken you may still hurt, but they no longer decide your direction. The same rejection may still disappoint you, but it no longer defines your value. The same silence may still feel uncomfortable, but it no longer convinces you that you should abandon yourself for attention. Nobody can break a person who has stopped betraying themselves internally. They can challenge you, they can disappoint you, they can misunderstand you, but they cannot easily turn you against yourself anymore. And that is where real strength begins, not in becoming untouchable, but in becoming unavailable to the old habit of doubting your own right to move. The hardest prison is not the one built by other people's opinions. It is the one you keep rebuilding inside yourself, every time you believe them before you examine yourself. That is why self-doubt is so dangerous. It does not simply make you feel insecure. It delays your action, weakens your voice, makes you ask for permission, and turns every criticism into a possible identity. But once you see the pattern, something begins to shift. You stop treating every painful moment as a verdict. You stop calling fear wisdom just because it sounds careful. You stop needing applause before you take the next honest step. You learn to listen to criticism without letting it become your name. You build evidence through action, not empty words. You protect your growth from people who are more comfortable with the version of you that doubted itself. This does not make life easy. People will still speak carelessly. Some will misunderstand you. Some will not support you. Some will only respect your growth after they realize they can no longer control your uncertainty. But the point was never to make the world gentle enough for you to move. The point is to become steady enough that the world does not have to approve before you begin. Self-trust is not arrogance. It is not pretending you are always right. It is the ability to stay with yourself long enough to see clearly, to correct yourself without hating yourself, to fail without turning failure into identity, to hear another person's opinion without handing them your inner authority. Nobody can break you in the same way. Once you stop helping doubt do the work from within, they may still challenge you, but they cannot easily define you. They may still criticize you, but they cannot automatically redirect you. They may still leave, misunderstand, or disapprove. But they no longer hold the key to your judgment, and maybe that is where strength becomes quiet. Not loud confidence, not performance, not the need to prove you are unshakable, just the simple decision to stop betraying yourself every time the outside world becomes uncertain. If this episode spoke to something in you, write "unbroken" in the comments as a reminder that your strength begins where self-doubt loses permission. And if you found value in this reflection, leave a like so it can reach someone else who may be standing at that same door, ready to close it from the inside.